The massive hall buzzed with hundreds of different voices. Creatures of all shapes and sizes filled the curved seats that rose up like a giant bowl. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few looked like walking rocks. This was the Galactic Concordat, where all the smart species in the galaxy came to talk about important things. Ambassador Zeftar walked slowly to the center stage. His people, the Velnari, looked like tall blue cats that walked on two legs. They were known for being very careful and always watching what happened in the galaxy. Today, Zeftar had something very important to tell everyone. The noise in the hall got quieter as Zeftar reached the speaking platform. A hologram machine came to life, showing images in the air above his head. The pictures showed a small blue and green planet with one moon. Friends from across the galaxy, Zeftar began, his voice carrying to every corner of the huge room. I stand before you today with a warning about a new species. They call themselves humans, and they come from this world they name Earth. Some delegates leaned forward in their seats. Others looked bored. New species were discovered all the time, and most were not very interesting. The hologram changed to show tall pink creatures that walked on two legs. They had hair on their heads and seemed to wear clothes made of different materials. They looked weak and soft compared to most galactic species. These humans have just learned to travel faster than light, Zeftar continued. They have spread to 3 star systems near their home world. Our scouts have been watching them for 50 of their years. A loud, rough voice interrupted from the crowd.
Why waste our time with such weak creatures?
The voice belonged to General Thakmor of the Krexion Empire. He was huge, even sitting down. His people looked like giant lizards covered in thick armor plates. They had sharp teeth and claws that could cut through metal. The Krexion were known as the strongest fighters in the galaxy. These humans fight each other all the time, Thakmor continued, standing up to his full frightening height. Look at them. They have thin skin, small teeth, and tiny claws. My youngest child could defeat 10 of them. Many other delegates nodded and made sounds of agreement. The humans did look very weak compared to most galactic species. Zeftar waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke again, his voice more serious than before. General Thakmor, your people are indeed mighty warriors, but strength is not always what it appears to be. The hologram changed to show human cities, human machines, and human soldiers. These creatures may look weak, but they have something else. What could they possibly have that we should fear? Asked Commander Vexira of the Raider clans. Her people were known for attacking weak worlds and taking slaves. They looked like giant insects with metal parts attached to their bodies. Zeftar took a deep breath. In my people's 40,000 years of watching the galaxy, we have learned many things. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have watched as strong species destroyed weak ones, and sometimes as weak species surprised everyone. But there is one rule we have learned that has never been broken. The hall became very quiet. When the Velnari spoke of rules they had learned over 40,000 years, smart beings listened. Never attack humans, Zeftar said clearly. Those who do will find that escape becomes hopeless. For a moment nobody spoke. Then General Thakmor started laughing. It was a deep, scary sound that echoed through the hall. Soon other delegates were laughing too. You're telling us to fear creatures that look like they would break if we stepped on them? Thakmor said between laughs. Old cat, I think your people have become too careful. These humans are nothing but easy prey. Commander Vexira clicked her metal claws together. My scouts have already mapped their colonies. Weak defenses, soft targets, and good workers for our slave markets. Why should we miss such an opportunity because of old fears? Zeftar looked around the hall. He could see that most delegates thought he was being too worried about nothing. Even some of his friends from peaceful species seemed to think the humans were not dangerous. I understand your doubt, Zeftar said. The humans do appear weak. They do fight among themselves. Their technology does seem simple compared to ours, but appearances can lie. He touched a control and the hologram showed human history. Wars, cities burning, millions of humans fighting and dying. But it also showed something else. It showed how humans always came together when something from outside threatened them. Look closer, Zeftar urged. Yes, they fight each other. But watch what happens when outsiders attack them. See how quickly they stop fighting each other and turn to face the outside threat. See how they change from many small groups into one large group. Some delegates looked more carefully at the images, but most had already stopped paying attention. Admiral Corex of the Domination Fleet stood up. His people looked like metal spiders the size of horses. They were known for conquering worlds and turning other species into slaves. Even if they unite, so what? Korek said. Many species unite when attacked. It doesn't make them dangerous. Numbers mean nothing when those numbers are weak. Zeftar felt tired. He had hoped his reputation would make them listen, but he could see they had already decided. The humans looked weak, so they must be weak. It was simple thinking, but it was wrong. My friends, he said one last time, I have given you the warning my people have given me to share. What you do with this warning is your choice, but remember my words when you make your plans. As Zeftar walked back to his seat, he heard the delegates already talking excitedly among themselves. He caught pieces of conversations about raid plans, slave quotas, and dividing up human territory. General Thakmor was speaking loudly to a group of other military leaders. 3 systems, minimal defenses, and they fight with chemical explosives instead of energy weapons. My fleet could take all their worlds in a week. Commander Vexira was looking at holographic maps with other raider captains. The agricultural colonies would be perfect. Farmers make good workers, and they're usually peaceful. Admiral Korex was already planning which human worlds his people would claim. We'll take the industrial systems, turn their factories into production centers for our empire. From his seat, Zeftar watched as the most dangerous species in the galaxy made plans to attack the humans. He thought about sending another warning to his homeworld, but he knew they would just tell him he had done his duty. As the meeting ended and delegates began to leave, Zeftar noticed something that made him even more worried. The peaceful species, the ones who usually tried to stop conflicts, were staying quiet. They weren't planning to attack the humans, but they also weren't planning to warn them. Dr. Veltar, Zeftar's research partner, came up to him as the hall emptied. She was younger than him and sometimes questioned the old warnings. "Uncle," she said quietly, using the family title of respect, "are you certain about this warning? The humans really do look harmless. Perhaps the old fears are no longer needed." Zeftar looked at his niece with sad eyes. "Child, I hope I am wrong." "I truly do. But our people have survived 40,000 years by being careful. The warning about humans came from our most ancient records. It was written by our ancestors who knew things we have forgotten." As they walked out of the hall together, Zeftar could hear the excited planning of multiple species. Within days, he knew fleets would be moving toward human space. He only hoped that when it was over, there would still be enough of those species left to remember why the Velnari had tried to warn them. 3 months had passed since the warning at the Galactic Concordat. General Thakmor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the green and brown world of New Harvest grow larger on the viewing screen. This human colony was perfect for his first attack. Only 3,000 humans lived here, mostly farmers and their families. "All ships report ready, General," his communications officer said. The Krexion fleet had 12 warships, each one big enough to destroy a city. Against a farming colony with only basic defenses, it would be like using a hammer to crush an egg. "Begin the attack," Thakmor ordered. The human colony's small defense platforms tried to fight back, but their weapons were weak. Within an hour, all their defenses were destroyed. Krexion soldiers landed on the planet's surface and began rounding up the humans. Thakmor watched the reports come in. The humans fought hard, even the farmers. They used farming tools, hunting rifles, and even threw rocks at his armored soldiers. But they were no match for Krexion military technology. "Casualties?" Thakmor asked. 42 of our soldiers wounded, 3 killed," came the reply. "Human casualties are much higher. 500 dead, 800 captured. The rest are hiding." Thakmor smiled, showing his sharp teeth. This was even easier than he had expected. The old cat Zeftar had been worried about nothing. "Send the victory broadcast," he ordered. "Let the galaxy see how easily the great Krexion Empire deals with these weak humans." The broadcast went out across known space. It showed Krexion soldiers standing over human prisoners. General Thakmor appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, holding a human child in his clawed hand. "See how weak these creatures are," he announced. "The mighty humans that some feared are nothing but soft meat. Their colonies will make excellent additions to our empire. Their people will serve us as slaves." The broadcast was seen on hundreds of worlds. Many species began making their own plans to attack human colonies. The humans looked even weaker than they had thought. But the broadcast was also seen on Earth. Sarah Chen was eating breakfast in her small apartment when the emergency alert came through her communication device. As an admiral in the Earth Defense Force, she was always ready for urgent messages. But nothing had prepared her for what she saw. The broadcast showed human farmers and their children being loaded onto alien ships like cargo. She watched as creatures that looked like armored lizards laughed, while human prisoners begged for mercy. Sarah's coffee cup fell from her hand and broke on the floor, but she didn't notice. She was already reaching for her uniform jacket. Within an hour, Sarah was in the emergency command center deep under the mountains of Colorado. The room was full of military officers, government leaders, and scientists. Everyone was talking at once, but Sarah could see the same emotion on every face that she felt in her heart. Rage. President Martinez stood at the front of the room. He was a calm man who usually spoke softly, but today his voice was hard as steel. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just witnessed an unprovoked attack on our people. 800 of our citizens have been taken as slaves. 500 are dead, including children. He paused and looked around the room. As of this moment, all previous conflicts between our nations are ended. We have only one enemy now and only one mission. The room became completely quiet. Bring them home, the president said. All of them. Sarah felt something she had never experienced before. In her 30 years as a soldier, she had fought in many conflicts. Nations against nations, corporations against governments, colonies against Earth. But always, part of her had wondered if she was fighting the right people. Not today. Today, for the first time in human history, every soldier on Earth knew exactly who the enemy was and exactly what they had to do. The Unified Human Command was formed in 6 hours. Countries that had been enemies for centuries started sharing their most secret military technology. Corporate rivals began working together on weapon designs. Scientists who had been competing for research grants started collaborating freely. Dr. James Park, the head of Earth's fastest computer network, stood up during the emergency meeting. "Admirals, we need to talk about something important," he said. "For the past 50 years, every human who left Earth carried special instructions. Even our merchants, diplomats, and researchers. They were told to learn everything they could about alien technology, alien governments, and alien military forces." Admiral Chen looked surprised. "I wasn't told about this program." "Very few people knew," Dr. Park continued. "It was started after we first detected alien radio signals. The plan was simple. If we ever met aliens who were hostile, we needed to know everything about them before they learned about us." General Morrison, the head of Earth's army, leaned forward. "Are you telling us we have spies throughout alien space?" "Not spies exactly," Dr. Park said. "More like observers. Humans who have been quietly mapping alien civilization while pretending to be simple traders and researchers. Every major alien government, every important military base, every key technology center, we have humans there who have been watching and learning." President Martinez nodded slowly. "How long before we can contact them?" "We already have," Dr. Park replied. "The emergency signal went out an hour ago. Every human outside our solar system now knows what happened at New Harvest. They're waiting for orders." Meanwhile, on General Thakmore's flagship, the communications officer was looking confused at his instruments. "General, we're detecting some strange signals from human space," he reported. "Very quick bursts of data, but we can't decode them." Thakmore was enjoying a victory meal and didn't want to be bothered. Probably just their governments crying to each other about their losses. Ignore it, but the signals weren't cries for help. They were something much more dangerous. Battle plans, target lists, and detailed information about Krexion military capabilities were being shared between Earth and every human in the galaxy. Captain Martinez was a human merchant who had been trading in Krexion space for 10 years. The aliens thought he was harmless, just another human trying to make money. They had no idea that he had been carefully mapping their military bases and learning their security codes. When he received the emergency signal, Captain Martinez was docked at the main Krexion supply station. He looked around his small trading ship and smiled grimly. Hidden in the walls were enough explosives to destroy the entire station, but not yet. The plan was bigger than just one station. On the colony world of New Harvest, the surviving humans had been told that rescue ships would come for the prisoners. They had been told to hide and wait. They didn't know that something much more important was happening. Every human captured by the Krexion was a trained observer. While the aliens thought they were holding helpless farmers, they were actually holding people who had been watching and learning about Krexion technology for years. Maria Santos had been a farmer on New Harvest, but she had also been trained in alien technology analysis. As the Krexion soldiers pushed her into a holding cell, she was memorizing the lock system, the guard schedules, and the ship's layout. The Crexion thought they had won a great victory. They had no idea that they had just made the worst mistake in their species' history. They had attacked the one species in the galaxy that never forgot an enemy and never stopped planning for war. Deep in space, small human ships began appearing throughout Crexion territory. They didn't attack. They just watched, scanned, and sent information back to Earth. The hunt was about to begin. Captain Torres piloted her small reconnaissance ship through the darkness between stars. Her mission was simple: find every Crexion military base, map their defenses, and report back to Earth. What made it dangerous was that she was doing this alone, deep in enemy territory. Her ship, the Quiet Observer, was built to be invisible. It was painted black, ran on cold engines, and was small enough to hide behind asteroids. Most alien sensors couldn't detect it unless they were looking directly at it. "Control, this is Observer 7. She whispered into her communication device. "I've found their main fleet base in the Korvax system. Sending detailed scans now." Back on Earth, Admiral Chen watched as information poured in from dozens of ships like Torres. The data was amazing. In just 2 weeks, they had learned more about Crexion military capabilities than the aliens probably knew about themselves. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Davis said, looking up from his computer screen, "the reconnaissance ships are reporting something strange. When Crexion patrols try to catch them, the ships don't run away. They fight." Admiral Chen frowned. "That's not what they're supposed to do. Their orders are to gather information and avoid contact." "Yes, ma'am, but look at this." Davis put a video on the main screen. It showed a tiny human ship being chased by 3 large Crexion warships. Instead of running, the human ship turned around and rammed straight into the biggest enemy vessel. The explosion destroyed both ships. "The pilot survived long enough to send one final message," Davis continued. He played an audio recording. "This is for New Harvest. Tell my family I kept my promise." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. The pilots weren't just following orders. They were fighting a personal war. More reports came in. Human ships appeared throughout Crexion space, always in small numbers, always unexpected. When the Crexion tried to hunt them, something disturbing happened. The humans seemed to know where the alien ships would be before they got there. General Thakmore paced angrily on his flagship's bridge. 3 more patrol groups had been destroyed by human suicide attacks. His military advisors were starting to look nervous. "How are they coordinating so well?" he demanded. "These humans are operating across dozens of star systems, but they move like they're all part of the same mind." His intelligence officer, Commander Vextalk, had been studying captured human technology. What he had found worried him. "General, I believe the humans have a type of communication we don't understand," he reported. "Our intercepted messages show that they can coordinate their actions across impossible distances, almost instantly." "Impossible," Thakmore growled. "Nothing can communicate faster than our quantum transmitters." "Sir, with respect, we may be wrong about that. Watch this recording from the battle at Proxima Station." The screen showed a human attack on a small Crexion outpost. 5 human ships approached from different directions. At exactly the same moment, all 5 ships changed course as if they had received the same order, but the Crexion sensors detected no communications between them. "It's like they're reading each other's minds," Commander Vextalk said quietly. On the Velnari homeworld, Dr. Veltar was studying the same phenomenon. She had access to much better analysis equipment than the Crexion, and what she found made her call her uncle immediately. "Uncle Zeftar, you need to see this," she said when he arrived at her laboratory. "I've been analyzing human neural patterns from captured medical scans. Their brain structure is unlike anything in the known galaxy." She showed him a holographic display of a human brain compared to brains from other species. "Look at this section here. Most species have clear boundaries between individual consciousness, but humans, their minds seem to overlap somehow." Zeftar studied the display carefully. "What does this mean?" "I think humans can share thoughts and emotions in ways we can't detect. Not like the telepathic species we know, but something more subtle. When they're under stress, especially when their families are threatened, they become less like individuals and more like parts of a larger organism." Zeftar sat down heavily. "A hive mind that maintains individual creativity. That's what our ancestors warned about." Meanwhile, the human reconnaissance missions continued, but they were no longer just gathering information. They were preparing something much bigger. Captain Martinez, the merchant who had been operating in Crexion space for 10 years, received new orders from Earth. It was time to reveal what humans had really been doing all those years. He sent a coded message to every human in the galaxy. Phase 2 begins now. Across Krexion territory, humans who had been living as harmless traders, researchers, and workers suddenly revealed their true purpose. Dr. Helen Kim, who had been studying Krexion biology for 8 years, activated hidden devices she had planted throughout their medical research stations. Within hours, computer viruses were spreading through their military medical networks. Merchant ships that had been visiting Krexion worlds for years suddenly released clouds of tiny surveillance robots. These robots, no bigger than insects, spread throughout major cities and military bases. The Krexion had no idea that their most secret locations were now being watched by thousands of electronic eyes. But the most frightening revelation came when General Thakmor decided to make an example of the human. Prisoners from New Harvest, execute 10 of them, he ordered. Broadcast it across the galaxy. Show these insects what happens when they resist the Krexion Empire. The executions were carried out in front of cameras. 10 human farmers and colonists were killed while their families were forced to watch. The broadcast was sent to every major world in the galaxy. General Thakmor expected the humans to surrender after seeing this. Instead, something much worse happened. On Earth, President Martinez stood before the emergency assembly of all human leaders. His face was cold with fury. They have made their choice, he said simply. This is no longer a rescue mission. This is war. Admiral Chen received new orders within the hour. All restrictions on military action were removed. The goal was no longer to save the prisoners. The goal was to make sure that no alien species would ever think of attacking humans again. The first sign that something had changed came when Krexion patrol ships began disappearing. Not destroyed in battle, just gone. Search teams would find empty ships drifting in space, with no sign of what had happened to their crews. Captain Torres, still operating her reconnaissance ship in Krexion space, reported what she was seeing to Earth. Control, the aliens are getting scared. They're pulling their ships back to defend their home worlds, but I don't think they understand what they're really facing. Explain, Captain, Admiral Chen replied. Ma'am, I've been watching human ships operate out here for weeks. We're not fighting like any military force I've ever seen. We're fighting like an immune system. When one of us gets attacked, information spreads instantly to every other human in the area. We adapt, we learn, and we respond as one organism. Admiral Chen understood. The Krexion had attacked what they thought was a normal species. Instead, they had attacked something that the galaxy had never seen before. A species that could function as both individuals and as a unified organism when threatened. The reports from Krexion space became more desperate each day. Their military commanders were reporting impossible human tactics, coordination that defied explanation, and most disturbing of all, humans who seemed to know Krexion plans before the Krexion made them. General Thakmor finally realized that he had made a terrible mistake. But by then it was too late. The humans were no longer just gathering information. They were preparing to show the galaxy what happened to species that attacked human families. The message arrived at dawn on every major world in the galaxy. It appeared on government communication systems, military networks, and even personal devices. Somehow the humans had gained access to nearly every communication system in known space. The message was simple. We are coming. Ambassador Zeftar was drinking his morning tea when the message appeared on his personal communicator. He nearly dropped the cup when he realized what this meant. The humans weren't just fighting the Krexion anymore. They were sending a message to every species that had cheered the attack on New Harvest. Dr. Veltar rushed into his office without knocking. Something she had never done before. Uncle, you need to see the reports from our intelligence networks, she said, her voice shaking. The humans, they've been among us for decades. Not just as traders and researchers. They've been mapping everything. Zeftar set down his teacup. Show me. Dr. Veltar activated a holographic display that filled the room. It showed the locations of human activities throughout the galaxy over the past 50 years. Red dots marked confirmed human presence. Yellow dots marked probable human contacts. And green dots marked human influence. The display was almost entirely covered in colored dots. They've been to every major world. Every important space station, every military base, Dr. Veltar explained. But look at this pattern. They weren't just visiting randomly. They were systematically mapping our entire civilization Zeftar studied the display with growing alarm. The human visits followed a clear pattern. First, they would send merchants to establish trade relationships. Then researchers would arrive to study local culture and technology. Finally, diplomats would come to build political connections. "How many humans are currently living outside their home systems?" he asked. "We estimate at least 50,000, Dr. Veltar replied. "And that's just the ones we know about. They could be anywhere, looking like any species that's roughly their size and shape." On the Crexion homeworld, General Thakmor was dealing with his own version of this revelation. His intelligence staff had just informed him that humans had been working inside Crexion territory for years. "Impossible," he snarled. "My security forces would have detected alien infiltrators." Commander Vextok, his intelligence chief, looked nervous as he replied, "Sir, they weren't infiltrators in the traditional sense. They were invited guests. Merchants, researchers, diplomatic staff. We welcomed them because they seemed harmless and offered useful trade agreements." "Where are they now?" Thakmor demanded. "That's the problem, sir. We don't know. After the attack on New Harvest, every known human in our territory simply vanished. Their ships are gone, their trade posts are empty, and their diplomatic staff has disappeared." Thakmor felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. "How many were there?" "At least 3,000, sir. Possibly more." The general's claws scraped against his command chair as he gripped it tighter. 3,000 humans had been living and working in Crexion space, learning their secrets, mapping their defenses, and studying their weaknesses. And now they were all gone, presumably preparing for war. The fear became reality over the next few days. Crexion military bases began experiencing system failures. Computer networks crashed, weapon systems malfunctioned, and communication arrays went offline. At first, the Crexion thought it was just bad luck or equipment failures. Then they found the viruses. Dr. Kextal, the Crexion's chief technology officer, discovered sophisticated computer programs hidden throughout their military networks. These weren't simple viruses designed to cause damage. They were intelligence-gathering tools that had been collecting information for years. "General, these programs have been in our systems for at least a decade," he reported to Thakmor. "They've been copying our military plans, our ship designs, our defensive strategies, everything." "Can you remove them?" Thakmor asked. "Sir, they're everywhere. Removing them would require shutting down our entire military network and rebuilding it from scratch. That would take months." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species were making similar discoveries. The humans had been studying everyone, not just the Crexion. Commander Vexira of the Raider clans found that her most secure bases had been infiltrated by tiny surveillance devices. Admiral Corex of the Domination Fleet discovered that humans had detailed maps of his empire's defensive positions. Even peaceful species found evidence that humans had been quietly observing their technology and culture. The revelations continued to get worse. Captain Martinez, who had been operating as a simple merchant in Crexion space, sent a message directly to General Thakmor. It arrived on the general's personal communication device. Despite all the security systems protecting it, "General Thakmor," the message began, "My name is Captain Martinez of the Human Diplomatic Corps. For 10 years, I have been studying your people while pretending to be a harmless trader. I want you to understand something important. Every human who left Earth carried the same instructions. Learn everything, map everything, and prepare for the day when someone would attack our families." The message continued. "You made a mistake when you attacked New Harvest. You made a bigger mistake when you executed our people, but your greatest mistake was thinking that we are like other species. We are not. When you attack one human family, you attack all human families. When you threaten one human colony, you threaten all human colonies." General Thakmor's claws were shaking as he read the final part of the message. "We gave you a warning through Ambassador Zeftar. You chose to ignore it. Now you will learn why escape from human justice is hopeless." The Crexion military tried to trace the message's origin, but it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Somehow the humans had gained access to their most secure communication systems. Similar messages were being sent to every species that had supported the attack on New Harvest. The humans weren't just threatening the Crexion, they were threatening everyone who had cheered while human families were enslaved and murdered. The response from the aggressive species was predictable. They began gathering their fleets and preparing for war. The Crexion Empire, the Raider clans, and the Domination Fleet formed a temporary alliance. Together, they commanded over 1,000 warships and controlled dozens of worlds. But as their fleets moved toward human space, they discovered something terrifying. The humans weren't waiting for them to arrive. Human ships were already surrounding their homeworlds, not attacking, just watching. General Thakmor stood on his flagship's bridge, looking at the tactical display. 50 human ships surrounded the Krexion homeworld. They were small compared to his massive warships, but they had appeared without warning and seemed to ignore all attempts to communicate with them. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "our defense platforms are trying to lock onto the human ships, but they can't get a clear target. The humans are using some kind of stealth technology we've never seen before." "Fire anyway," Thakmor ordered. "Destroy them all." The massive defense platforms opened fire, sending waves of energy toward the human ships. But the humans seemed to know exactly where the weapons would fire before they fired. They moved out of the way at the last possible second, making the Krexion weapons look clumsy and slow. Then something happened that made Thakmor's blood run cold. One of the human ships sent a message directly to his bridge. The voice was calm and friendly, like someone talking to an old friend. "General Thakmor, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We're not here to attack your world. We're here to give you one chance to surrender. I will never surrender to weaklings like you," Thakmor roared into his communicator. "General," Captain Chen replied, still sounding friendly, "I don't think you understand your situation. Please look at your tactical display again." Thakmor looked at the display and felt his heart stop. The 50 human ships surrounding his world had become 500. Then as he watched, the number kept growing. 1,000 human ships, then 2,000, then 5,000. They weren't just surrounding his homeworld anymore. They were surrounding every major Krexion world, every military base, every space station. Somehow, without anyone noticing, the humans had moved an enormous fleet into position throughout the entire Krexion Empire. "How?" Thakmor whispered. Captain Chen's voice came through the communicator one last time. "General, we tried to warn you through Ambassador Zeftar. We told you that attacking humans would make escape hopeless. You didn't listen. Now you're going to learn what that really means." 6 months after the attack on New Harvest, the Galactic Concordat met again. The same great hall that had echoed with laughter at Zeftar's warning was now almost silent. Many seats that had been filled before were now empty. Ambassador Zeftar walked to the speaking platform again, but this time he was not alone. Beside him walked a human woman in a simple blue uniform. Captain Sarah Chen moved with quiet confidence, her eyes scanning the assembled delegates with calm attention. The hall was much quieter than before. Several species that had supported the attack on humans were no longer represented. The Raider clans had withdrawn from galactic politics entirely. The Domination Fleet had simply stopped responding to communications. And the Krexion Empire, well, nobody was quite sure what had happened to them. "Honored delegates," Zeftar began, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed hall. "6 months ago, I stood here to give you a warning. Today, I stand here to discuss what happened when that warning was ignored." He gestured to Captain Chen. "I present Captain Sarah Chen, representing humanity's first official membership in the Galactic Concordat." Captain Chen stepped forward. She was smaller than most of the aliens in the room, and she looked much more fragile than the armored warriors and massive creatures that filled the other seats. But nobody in the hall was fooled by appearances anymore. "Thank you, Ambassador Zeftar," she said, her voice pleasant and professional. "I'm here to answer any questions you might have about recent events, and to explain humanity's position going forward." The first question came from Admiral Corseth of the Stellar Defense Union, one of the few military leaders who had not supported attacking humans. "Captain Chen, many species are wondering what happened to the Krexion Empire. They seem to have disappeared." Captain Chen nodded calmly. "The Krexion Empire chose to attack human families. When we offered them a chance to surrender and return our people safely, they refused. As a result, their military capabilities have been permanently removed. But what happened to their worlds, their people?" pressed Admiral Corseth. "Their civilian populations are unharmed," Captain Chen replied. "They're free to rebuild their society in any way they choose, as long as they don't threaten other species. However, their ability to wage war has been completely eliminated." Ambassador Vexillari of the Peaceful Alliance spoke up. Her people were known for avoiding conflicts and trying to help other species get along. "Captain, many of us are concerned about how quickly your people were able to neutralize such a large empire. The Crexion had over 1,000 warships and controlled dozens of worlds. Captain Chen smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. Ambassador, our people spent 50 years preparing for this possibility. Every human who left our solar system carried instructions to learn about galactic civilization and map potential threats. We've been studying your military capabilities, your political structures, and your technological weaknesses for decades. The hall became even quieter. The implications of what she was saying were terrifying. Dr. Veltar, who was attending as part of the Velnari delegation, asked the question that everyone was thinking. Captain Chen, are you saying that humans have been infiltrating our societies for 50 years? Not infiltrating, Captain Chen corrected. We were invited. Human merchants, researchers, diplomats, and workers have been welcomed throughout the galaxy. We simply made sure that while we were helping to build trade relationships and cultural exchanges, we were also learning how to protect ourselves if someone decided to attack us. She paused and looked around the room. The galaxy should understand that this was never about conquest or domination. It was about survival. We knew that eventually, some species would see us as weak targets. We wanted to be ready. Ambassador Zeftar stepped forward again. Captain Chen's people represent something new in galactic history. Most species achieve power through superior technology, psychic abilities, or physical dominance. Humans achieved it through long-term planning and the ability to work together as one organism while maintaining individual creativity. What do you mean by work together as one organism? Asked Chancellor Mordek of the Trade Federation. Captain Chen considered her answer carefully. When our families are threatened, humans stop thinking like separate individuals and start thinking like parts of a larger whole. We share information instantly, coordinate our actions across vast distances, and adapt to new situations as a unified force. But unlike a traditional hive mind, we still maintain our individual personalities and creativity. Is this some kind of psychic ability? Asked Dr. Quintar, a scientist from the research collective. We don't think so, Captain Chen replied. Our scientists believe it's related to our evolutionary history. For millions of years, humans survived by forming tight family groups that work together against larger, stronger predators. When outsiders threaten our families, we automatically return to that ancient response pattern. Ambassador Vexillari looked nervous as she asked her next question. Captain, what are humanity's intentions now? Will you be expanding into the territories of the species you neutralized? No, Captain Chen said firmly. We have no interest in ruling other species or taking their worlds. We prefer trade partnerships and cultural exchanges. However, the galaxy should understand that we will respond to any future attacks on human populations with absolute commitment. What does that mean exactly? Asked Admiral Korseth. Captain Chen's expression became very serious. It means that any species that attacks human families will discover that we never stop learning, never stop adapting, and never forget. We won't just defend ourselves. We will systematically eliminate the threat while offering friendship to those who choose peace. The hall was completely silent as the delegates absorbed this information. Ambassador Zeftar spoke again. The humans represent a new balance of power in the galaxy. They have demonstrated that they can eliminate major military threats quickly and completely, but they have also shown that they prefer cooperation to conquest. Captain Chen nodded. We hope that today's discussion will be the last time we need to explain why attacking humans is a mistake. We'd much rather spend our time building positive relationships with the species that choose friendship over aggression. Over the following weeks, the effects of the demonstration became clear throughout the galaxy. The aggressive species that had planned to attack human colonies quietly abandoned those plans. Several empires that had built their power on enslaving weaker species began releasing their captives and reforming their governments. Not because the humans demanded it, but because they had seen what happened to species that threatened human families. Trade requests began pouring in from dozens of worlds. Species that had previously ignored humans now wanted to establish diplomatic relationships and commercial partnerships. Human colonies found themselves welcomed throughout the galaxy as neighbors and allies. Captain Martinez, the former merchant who had spent 10 years mapping Crexion territory, was promoted to ambassador and assigned to establish humanity's first embassy on the Velnari homeworld. During the opening ceremony, Ambassador Zeftar spoke privately with him. Ambassador Martinez, my people have a question we're almost afraid to ask. What's that, Ambassador Zeftar? How many humans are currently living throughout the galaxy, gathering information and building relationships? Martinez smiled. Enough to ensure that what happened to the Crexion never needs to happen again, but also enough to help build the kind of galaxy where humans and aliens can live together peacefully. As news of humanity's peaceful intentions spread, something unexpected happened. Instead of fearing humans, many species began to admire them. They had demonstrated overwhelming military capability, but they used it only to protect their families and help other species achieve peace. The galaxy began to change. Wars between different species became rare, not because of human threats, but because other species realized that conflicts were wasteful when cooperation was so much more profitable. Human colonies spread throughout the galaxy, always welcomed as valuable neighbors and trading partners. The few remaining aggressive civilizations quietly withdrew to distant regions, having learned that some species were simply too dangerous to threaten. Ambassador Zeftar's final report to the Galactic Concordat summarized the new reality. The humans have taught us that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when destruction is necessary, and the restraint to use it only when protecting the innocent. They have shown us that the most dangerous species in the galaxy can also be the most peaceful, as long as their families are safe. And in the end, that was exactly what the humans had wanted all along, not to rule the galaxy, but to make it a place where their children could grow up safely among friends.